Creepy True Stories Part 1. Lisa Lamb was visiting the California Cecil Hotel when she strangely disappeared. Surveillance shows her coming in and out of an elevator almost as if she's scared of somebody or possessed or something, seeing a ghost, but there's nobody there. Nobody could explain this strange behavior. One day, customers of the hotel started tasting something weird in the water. When they went to check the water tanks, they found Lisa's body in it. No drugs or alcohol was found in her autopsy. And to this day, nobody knows what happened to Lisa.
This is why you should always check under your bed for monsters. In 2012, a young woman who was on the phone with her boyfriend walks downstairs to the lobby of her apartment building, collects her mail, and then heads back up to her room. She sits on her bed to start sifting through the mail when she drops her phone and it falls under the bed. She lies down on the ground to try to reach her arm out to grab her phone when she notices something horrible underneath her bed. A man is lying underneath her bed with his back to her. He's in the fetal position. She manages not to scream. She grabs her phone and says to her boyfriend, "Hey, I gotta go shower. I'll call you back." And she quickly runs into the bathroom, locks the door, turns on the shower, and then jumps out her first floor window. Once she's safely across the street, she calls the police, who quickly arrive, and they go inside and they come out with a deranged, skinny-looking man. Before they take him away, one of the officers walks over to her with a very grim look on his face. He looks at her and he just says, "We found him standing outside of your bathroom holding a knife. He was waiting for you."
If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. It all began in 2005 when a group of cave divers wanted to film a documentary in the most dangerous cave in the world. A few hours into their descent, a huge storm erupted, causing the main entrance to the cave to collapse. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks coming from the ceiling, they were forced to swim through an unexplored part of the cave. After diving for over an hour, they came across an island and decided to set up camp until the rescuers could get to them. After 2 days of being trapped in the cave, the cameraman decided to start filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid.
Tunnels, take your pick! Oh, fuck it! Hello! Please! Is there anybody there? Hello!
Located in a cemetery in Vermont, there is a grave with a window to peek inside. This grave belonged to a man named Timothy Clark Smith. Timothy had a fear of being buried alive. This may seem like an irrational fear, but it was actually more common than people realize. Timothy patented a design for his own gravesite. Not only did he include a window on his tombstone, he also built a contraption that included a bell. In the case that Timothy woke up underneath the ground, he could pull a string and ring a bell to signal for help. Timothy passed away on Halloween in 1893, and he never needed to use the bell. The window to his grave is still there, although the visibility to see inside of it is very low after the years. But I can't imagine being a gravekeeper, hearing a bell ringing in the middle of the night, knowing that you are the only one there.
Scariest things police have seen, part 18. This one's pretty bizarre. A police officer made a traffic stop on a man in a vehicle. The police officer spoke with the man and didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary. When the officer returned to his vehicle, he noticed a female officer standing next to him. He didn't recognize her and he didn't call for backup. The only thing she said to him was, "He has a gun in the back seat." The officer cautiously approached the vehicle again, arrested the man, and sure enough, found a gun in the back of the car. After this, the female officer was nowhere to be found. It turns out the man he arrested was wanted for murdering a female police officer years before.
Here is the most haunted song ever made. And yes, I said that right, a haunted song. This song has been responsible for countless suicides. This song was also banned in England. Even the creator of this song killed himself. And the way he died is not a normal suicide. He jumped out of a window, survived, went to the hospital, and then killed himself with a wire. He did not want to be alive. The title of this song is called Gloomy Sunday. So take a guess what I'm going to be doing today. I'm about to bump some Gloomy Sunday. If you don't want to hear it, just click off the video. But if you're like me and you want to hear what this song actually sounded like, let's do it. Okay, I'm on the song and apparently 10.4 million people have listened to it. The song sucks. It's just not a good song.
This is how, for a group of college students, the game Among Us turned deadly. One night, Blair was playing with his friends through video call. Brayden, Allie, Jenny, and David. His screen flashed. Crewmate, there is one imposter among us. A few seconds later, they all heard Allie gasp through their video call and say, "No, no, get away from me." But her character was still standing there, not dead, as if she was just away from the keyboard. After a while of not responding, Jenny goes to check on her. But as Jenny walked into her room, she found Allie on the ground, surrounded by a pool of blood. Then her computer screen flashes. Dead body reported. At this time, Blair picks up the phone to call the police, but when he hears footsteps coming closer to his room, he opens the door to find Brayden in the common room holding a knife in one hand and a computer in the other. Blair shuts the door, opens the window to try to climb out, but he catches a glimpse on his computer screen one last time. Dead body reported, with an image of his character.
If you've heard of the movie Megan is Missing, you're gonna want to hear this story. So this movie is based off a real story of a man named Ward Weaver. So Ward Weaver grew up in Portland, Oregon, and he turned out to be The movie Megan is Missing is based on the time that two girls and them and some met in his backyard. My parents lived in Oregon their whole life until they had kids, and they were always buying houses and flipping them. So they were constantly looking for new houses to buy. So my parents found this one house in northern Portland that they thought was a pretty nice house and it was pretty cheap. So they decided to go check it out. So after the realtor showed my parents this house, they decided to buy it. After the first few days of them trying to flip this house, they noticed some really weird things starting to happen. There were lights that were randomly flashing and doors that would randomly close. Then they hear a knock on the door. I'm sorry, but come back for part 2.
This is a Dybbuk. You might recognize it from this video that surfaced in 2018 of Post Malone touching it inside of Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum, and most of us know that didn't end well. But what is a Dybbuk, and why is it considered the most haunted item in the world? The Dybbuk is a wine box that was purchased in 2001 by an American man at an estate sale in Spain. When the man learned that the item was a family heirloom, he offered to return it to the family, but they insisted that he keep it. The box was purchased by the family's grandmother after the Holocaust had ended, but it sat unopened inside of her sewing room because the grandmother was convinced a Dybbuk was inside of it. Dybbuk is a demon that has the ability to possess different items. When the American man brought the box home, he opened it up, and this is what was inside. Inside the box, there were 2 locks of hair, a single candle holder, 2 pennies from the 1920s, and a small statue with the Hebrew word peace inscribed. Like for part 2.
This is why you should never talk to strangers in an elevator. One day, a surgeon was working the night shift at a hospital. He just finished this operation on a patient and was going to the basement. He entered the elevator and there was one other woman already inside. They were casually chatting when the elevator door opened and another woman was about to enter. But the surgeon looked horrified. He quickly slammed the close button and punched the highest floor of the building. Surprised, the woman asked why he was being so rude and wouldn't let the other woman in the elevator with them. The surgeon explained that in this hospital, all patients wear white wristbands with their names printed on them, but the red wristbands are placed on all of the corpses. The surgeon then looks to the woman in the elevator with him and says, "That was the same woman I just operated on. She died on the operating table. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" The woman in the elevator with him just smiled, raised her arm, and said, "You mean like this one?"
Okay, sir, what's the location of the body? In the middle of nowhere. Perfect place. Just look for a truck. Hey, a corpse. Are you with the deceased now, sir? I am the deceased. Excuse me?
Scary Things You Say Part 23. My son said to me, "Remember when I was Uncle Maury?" That was my brother. His name was Maury. He died when he was 33 and my son was born 5 years later. When I was little, over a year old, my mom was walking down the stairs. I told her, "Be careful, Mommy. That's how my husband died." What the heck? Babies know everything. I was 5. I found it out because my little brother talked to me, but no one believes me. He said, "I know your pain." I was screaming. My son was 3.5 years when he told me how much I was crying for a baby. He'd say, God told me to wait because it wasn't my time. This is so I find it fascinating actually, not scary. Mine asks why the little boy that lives with us is always sad. I had a miscarriage prior to having him. Oh, this is so sad. My 6-year-old niece once asked, where were we before we were here?
This is why you should never try using a Ouija board. My friends and I decided to play with a Ouija board after work in our office and spoke to a girl named Quinn. She didn't say much but seemed friendly enough, but when I mentioned my girlfriend, she got super mad and protective of me. When it got to 2 a.m, we said goodbye to her, but about a week later, in the middle of the night, the office block that we worked in burnt down. It creeped us all out, so a week later we used the Ouija board again near a lake and asked for Quinn. When we got through to her, we asked if she started the fire, to which she responded, yes. About 2 weeks later, I was driving to my girlfriend's house with the board in the back of the truck. I didn't know it at the time, but my girlfriend was in fact cheating on me. But I guess Quinn knew because I lost control of the truck and flipped it upside down. When the cops arrived to make sure I was okay, they reminded me what road I was on. Route 666, Virginia.
This film is said to be one of the scariest films ever made. So scary, in fact, it can actually kill people. Netflix released a new film called Veronica, and it is said to be one of the scariest films to ever be made. This film is reportedly so terrifying that people are turning it off before it even finishes. Netflix themselves have even said that 1 out of 100 people watching this could actually watch the full film. Even experts have suggested that the film can actually kill people who have weak hearts. So watch this at your own risk.
This old lady killed so many people. Baba Anushka, she loved chemistry. And when her husband died, she was like, I'm gonna make the house into a laboratory and sell potions. So a bunch of girls came to her and they were like, we don't want our husbands to go to war. And she was like, I can make them really, really sick so they don't have to. And they were like, yeah, do that. So she started getting really, really popular. But then all the girls were like, we actually don't like our husbands. Can you do a little more? And Baba Anushka was like, yeah, I can kill them. So then all the girls were like, oh, we like this. So Baba Anushka made these deadly potions, gave them to the girls gave them to their abusive husbands, and they were dead in like 8 days. And Baba Anushka would do this thing where she'd ask the girls, how heavy is the problem? Which was code for, how heavy is your husband? Because I gotta make sure I put enough in it, mama. She was so successful that she hired a sales agent to go into town and like sniff out people with marital problems. But this one girl fucked it all up. After she killed her shitty husband, she used another potion to kill her new husband's rich uncle. And the police were like, can you explain this? And she was like, it was Baba Anushka. Baba Anushka was like, are you fucking kidding me? But
wondered what it would be like if you couldn't see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. In 1983, a group of scientists thought that a human without any senses would be able to perceive God, so they found an elderly man who volunteered to have all of his senses surgically destroyed for this experiment. He would be completely alone with his thoughts. After a few days, he claimed that he heard his dead wife speaking to him. Then he began naming the dead relatives of the scientists and only information that their dead relatives would know. After a week, he started throwing himself against a wall to try and feel some kind of pain, but he couldn't. He tried to claw at his non-functioning eyes, but he felt nothing. He began to yell, no heaven, no forgiveness for 5 hours straight. In the end, he had to be physically restrained for weeks. When he turned his blind eyes and made direct eye contact for the first time with a scientist and said, I have spoken to God, and he has abandoned us, before his heart stopped for no apparent reason.
Scariest urban legends from every state. Texas, the Candy Lady. In the 1900s, children in an unnamed rural town began to go missing, and people were blaming it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's windowsills, and she would be able to lure them in by leaving notes promising more candy. This story picked up steam when a farmer found rotted teeth on his farm and eventually found the dead body of a boy with candy stuffed in his pocket. While little is known about the origin of this story, many claim that the Candy Lady is real, and her name was Clara Crane. Whichever state gets the most likes, I'll do tomorrow.
Medical surgery's gone wrong, part 1. Imagine you're supposed to be asleep during surgery, but you're actually awake and can't move. This is what happened to Katrina Ossity. It's called anesthesia awareness, and this happens to people sometimes during surgery. Katrina went in to go get a tumor removed. When they put her under anesthesia, she realized she was awake still, but couldn't move or talk. She said she could feel the incisions, the smell of her skin being burnt while they were doing surgery. She said it hurt and felt really uncomfortable and she couldn't do anything about it. She would try to scream and warn them, but her body wouldn't move. She said she felt like a helpless meat sack of organs. It's honestly a nightmare. Kinda makes you scared to go in for surgery. Like this video if you want more of this series. I'll do a part 2.
This is why parents should always believe their kids. In 2010, a woman arrives home from work only to notice that the entrance to the attic is open. She didn't think too much of it though, because that morning at breakfast, her 15-year-old son had said he was going to go up to get a book to take to his school camp for the week. With her husband also travelling for work, she closes the attic door and slides the lock across to make herself feel better. On the kitchen counter, there's a note from her son. It says, "Hey mum, have a great week. I'll see you when I get home. Love, Dan." P.S. I heard that knocking in the attic again I told you about, so maybe get Dad to check the water heater when he gets home. A few nights later, she has a dream of water dripping on her face. She suddenly wakes, turns on the nightstand light, and notices she's covered in blood. In a panic, she checks herself to make sure she's not hurt, but looks up and sees blood dripping through the ceiling. She calls police, and when they arrive, they go up into the attic. They find a mad, deranged man living up there. They also find her 15-year-old son's body slumped over the master bedroom. He still had his backpack on and was holding a book. He was half eaten. This story's called It's Safe to Come Out Now. Late one night, a little girl was upstairs playing in her bedroom when she heard a bang at the front door. She hears her mum yell out to her dad, "Hey, somebody's at the door, can you go check?" So the dad goes and sees who's at the door. Startled, she hears her dad yelling at somebody at the door, and all of a sudden the front door slams. There's empty silence in the house as the girl can only hear herself breathe. But then hears her mother screaming and yelling, "She's upstairs, she's upstairs." Panicked, she runs and hides in her parents' bedroom wardrobe where it locks from the inside. Standing in there quietly, consumed by her own fear, she hears somebody walk in the room. Through the small gap in the door, she hears her father softly say, "It's safe to come out now, sweetie." As he says this, she sees his bright blue eyes shining through the gap in the door. She stays quiet and thinks, "He's been saying this for hours now, but my dad's eyes are brown."
Mary Bell. Mary Bell was born from a 17-year-old sex worker in England. Throughout this little girl's childhood, she was always abused. From her own mother and from her mother's clients. That's when she decided to take her anger out on other people. The day before her 11th birthday, she took this little boy into an abandoned house and strangled him. His name was Martin Brown. Her and her friend Norma Brown even went to a nursery home and trashed it, but the cops let it go because they thought it was a sick prank. Then they took this little boy named Brian Howe by the nursery and also strangled him. Mary did unspeakable things to his body. She was then convicted of manslaughter and deemed a psychopath. She was locked up for 12 years but then got released in 1980 at the age of 23. She was then given a brand new identity to avoid the spotlight. So now she's free to do whatever she wants. She could even be your neighbor and you would never even know. Like this video for a part 2 of Evilest Children.
Hi, this will be my first TikTok in English. I don't know how this is gonna go. But there was a guy going to a party one day, but his mom was having like a bad feeling about it and she didn't want him to go. But she said, "I'm going." And he said no, but he did. And when he was getting in the car with his friends, her mom said, "God is going with you." And one of his friends laughed and said,
"Only if he's going in the trunk, like the luggage rack."
And they all left. Later that night, they've gotten a big car accident. Like their car crashed. And when the police came, they were like looking in the car and they all died. The 4 people in the car died. And when they looked in the trunk, there was an egg box and all the eggs were like perfect still. But they all died. So yeah, God was in the trunk.